Exiled by my own family, I became their only hope when everything fell apart. Hello Reddit, I, 32F, never imagined that I would be sharing my entire being online, but here I am. My life was completely upended in a way I never anticipated. I was expelled from the house by my parents. And why? Because I managed to pay for my MBA without their invaluable assistance, and my sister, 36F, the golden child, couldn't tolerate it. Although it's a lengthy tale, I need to share it, and perhaps you guys might provide some guidance or simply a virtual shoulder to weep on. Allow me to illustrate the dynamics of my family for you. I've always been the underdog, the last in line, and the one who never quite fits in. It was obvious from the beginning that my sister was the favorite. Growing up in a suburban community just outside of Chicago, my folks would hold a parade if she received an A. If I received an A, it was like, oh, cool, what's for dinner? You understand. Sarah, my sister, was always the center of attention. She seemed to do better at everything, without really trying, and she was more attractive and gregarious. School plays? She took the lead. Captain of a sports team? Naturally. Grades, perfect scores. I was the awkward, bookish kid who didn't want to be in the spotlight and would rather sit in my room and code. My parents were enamored with Sarah as if she were a prodigy. When she enrolled in a prestigious business school, they covered everything, including her tuition, fashionable clothes, her apartment in a fancy area of town, and even her excursions to Cancun over spring break. They were often boasting to anyone who would listen about their successful daughter because they were so proud of her. I kept my head down and assumed I would have to handle things alone. In the interim, despite taking out loans and working part-time jobs during my time in college, I was still able to earn honors in computer science. But was there a celebration for me? My mother just said, "Dear, that's nice. Have you looked at the pictures from Sarah's graduation? Wasn't she beautiful?" In the present, I have spent the last few years managing projects for a digital company. Although it pays the bills and is a fine job, I'm looking for more. One day I hope to launch my own business, rise in my job, or even get into top management. I therefore made the decision to apply to a respectable university's MBA program. The catch? The cost of tuition is extremely high, 6 figures to be exact. I had the hope that my parents might lend me some support. After all, they funded Sarah's whole schooling, right? After a family supper one evening, I sat them down. To my astonishment, the topic of conversation revolved around Sarah's most recent achievement at the family restaurant. I outlined my strategy, gave them an overview of the school, described how it would advance my career, and then tactfully brought up the topic of tuition. The expressions on their faces, it would seem as though I had asked them to sell their kidneys or something. They informed me outright that they couldn't pay my tuition, which is fine. I understand that MBAs are costly, but the fact that they refused to even co-sign a loan was what really infuriated me. I only wanted their assistance so I wouldn't be drowning in debt for the rest of my life, not to pay for everything. Their logic? We have already covered Sarah's tuition. Now is the time to consider our future. The worst part is that they also intended to grow the family restaurant. It seemed like they were investing all of their savings in that. What I was hearing was unbelievable. So you could afford Sarah's entire education, but you can't even co-sign a loan for me? I asked, trying to speak steadily. Well, honey, Sarah's education was an investment in the family business, my mother boldly said. You having an MBA, that's only for you, isn't it? Only for me? As if I weren't related to them, as if they didn't care about my success. I was at a loss. My parents seemed to be putting unnecessary barriers in my path, but I didn't want to miss this chance. When it came to me, they had to be prudent and frugal, but they had no trouble spending a lot of money on Sarah. I had no choice but to ask my Aunt Margaret. Now let me tell you that my dad's older sister, Aunt Margaret, is quite different from my parents. To be honest, she is far more successful than both of them and works as a neurosurgeon. She has always been nice to me, though, and she's also quite grounded. There was always this strange tension between her and my parents at family get-togethers. They would pretend to be courteous, but I could tell they were resentful of her success in comparison to their own. In particular, my dad detested feeling like he was overshadowed by her. When I was younger, I overheard arguments in which my dad accused Aunt Margaret of being conceited and defaming him. At first, I wasn't particularly interested in involving her, but I was desperate. One day, I contacted her to see whether she would be able to assist me with the tuition. I described the circumstances, my parents' refusal to assist, and the significance of this MBA to me. Aunt Margaret made no hesitation at all. "Of course I'll help," she said. "Why didn't you approach me earlier? It would be an honor for me to invest in your future because I've always believed you have a lot of promise." I felt so grateful, but I was also afraid my dad would find out. He would go crazy if he found out that I had approached his sister behind his back to request money. In order to keep it a secret, I pleaded with Aunt Margaret, recognizing the complicated family dynamics at work. She concurred. After that, everything was well for a time. Since my tuition was paid for and I was preparing to begin my MBA school, I assumed I was safe. I felt both anxious and optimistic about the future. I felt like I was winning for once. Sarah made the decision to wreck everything at that point. I'm still not sure how she learned that I had asked Aunt Margaret for assistance. Perhaps she snooped through my emails when I wasn't looking, or perhaps she overheard a call. However, she did discover it, and as the golden child that she is, she was unable to ignore it. She had to make it into a large theatrical spectacle. After a long day at work, I was thrilled to share some news about my impending MBA orientation when I got home one evening. However, I could sense a problem as soon as I entered the room. The home was eerily silent, and the air felt heavy with stress. My heart fell as I walked to the living room. Everything I owned, including my books, clothes, and even my bedding, was packed up in boxes. I felt as though the house was erasing me. Sarah was standing off to the side with this smug, self-satisfied expression on her face, while my parents were seated on the couch, their emotions a mixture of disappointment and rage. I had the impression that I had entered a perverse intervention. My father wasted no time. "Explain this," he asked, tossing me a pile of papers. I picked up the papers with trembling hands, not understanding a word he was saying. I became aware that Sarah had completely lost her mind at that point. She had created these fictitious emails between Aunt Margaret and me, giving the impression that I was betraying the family. The emails gave the impression that I had given Aunt Margaret the trade secrets of our family restaurant in return for her covering my tuition. Recipes, supplier details, and even the restaurant's finances were discussed. I didn't really have access to any of these things, but Sarah did. My eyes were unbelieving. After looking through my laptop, Sarah discovered several emails that I had sent to Aunt Margaret, which she subsequently altered using Photoshop or some other program. She painted me as a traitor of some sort, as though I had betrayed our family. I was taken aback. "This isn't real," I stumbled my way out. "These emails are fraudulent. I would never do this." My parents, however, didn't even pay attention. My mom was crying as they stood there, and my dad was furious and red-faced. He said, "We trusted you, and you stabbed us in the back." They trusted Sarah, regardless of what I said, since they obviously did. She was always believed by them. It felt as though I had vanished from the world, and that all the years I had spent being a good daughter, working hard, and never getting into trouble were in vain. I knew then and there that I would always be second best in their eyes. They would always have doubts about me. My father said, in a chilly tone, "You must go. We won't have a traitor in this house." I pleaded with them to think again. I made an effort to clarify the MBA and how Aunt Margaret was only assisting me, much like they had assisted Sarah. My parents didn't care, but I didn't want to burden Aunt Margaret, especially since she had already promised to cover my tuition. They claimed I was a traitor and refused to interact with me. Sarah simply stood there the entire time, her arrogant expression never changing. Her eyes said louder than words could. She had won. The sister whom she always viewed as a rival was finally gone. That was it. I only had a few boxes of my belongings and the clothing on my back when I fled. I noticed the neighbors looking out their windows while I was loading my car, presumably curious about the drama. I felt totally alone, deceived, and embarrassed. As soon as I was in my car, I called Aunt Margaret, crying so hard that I could not speak. Without asking any questions, she told me to come to her apartment right away. Without her, I'm not sure how I would have made it through. I'm currently residing at Aunt Margaret's home. With her offer of a place to stay and her assurance that she still wants to assist with my MBA, she has been a tremendous support system. Nevertheless, I vividly remember that night, Sarah standing there with that arrogant expression on her face, knowing she had won. My parents glaring at me like I was a criminal, and all of my belongings packed away when I walked into my house. I don't know. I'm not sure what to do, Reddit. A part of me wants to defend myself and show that Sarah was lying. If I looked closely enough, I could certainly find proof that the emails were forged, but I also want to break all connections and never look back. For those who are so eager to assume the worst of me, why should I fight? How can I possibly comprehend this betrayal, given that my own family has abandoned me? How can I go on? In a few weeks, the MBA program will begin, and I should be thrilled. However, I'm coping with this emotional trauma instead. I keep going over everything again in my mind, wondering if I missed any clues. Was Sarah this cunning all the time? Were my parents as eager to discard me all the time? After this, how can I ever trust anyone again? Aunt Margaret advises me to concentrate on the chances my MBA will present for my future, although it's difficult to look past the hurt and rage in the moment. She claims that achievement is the best form of retaliation. I would appreciate any guidance from here. How do I reconstruct my life, given that my own sister would go to such extents to harm me? How do I handle this? And when I feel so damaged on the inside, how do I interact with my MBA program instructors and classmates? Here I feel like I'm drowning. Give me a lifeline, Reddit, if you can. Update 1. It's been a long time, 3 years to be precise, Reddit, since I last wrote about my family throwing me out. A lot has happened. I wanted to let you know how things have progressed. I started by finishing my MBA program, which had a profound impact on me. I was in a lot of mental upheaval when I first started, but I was able to focus all of that energy on my academics. I graduated at the top of my class, but it wasn't easy. The girl who constantly felt inferior is no longer there. She has been replaced with a lady who is confident in her abilities and doesn't hesitate to express them. I got a job at a prestigious consulting business after graduating. I love my job, but it's tough. I'm in a setting where my abilities and diligence are truly valued for the first time in my life. No more living in the shadow of others. During all of this, Aunt Margaret has been a rock. She's become the loving family I never had, not just a place to stay. We discuss everything from her most intriguing medical cases to my most recent professional endeavors during our weekly dinners. I've learned so much from her about defending my rights and appreciating my own worth. 3 years of radio silence about Sarah and my parents. No emails, texts, or phone calls. It was painful at first. However, as time went on, I came to see that their absence was enabling me to develop in ways that I could not have while living with them. I've created a proud life for myself, free from the need for approval and continual comparisons. However, life can be unpredictable. Last Saturday, just when I thought I had everything worked out, Sarah arrived at my door. I nearly failed to identify her. The air of superiority in the fancy attire vanished. She was wearing a basic sweater and jeans that had seen better days, and she had big circles under her eyes and her hair pulled up in a hurry. She looked discouraged. "Hey," she said in a little voice, "can we talk?" Curiosity overcame me. I wanted to slam the door in her face. I opened the door for her. Sarah sat uncomfortably, fidgeting on the couch. "I need your help," she blurted out at last. "The eatery is having serious problems." The family firm, she said, was close to going bankrupt. Our parents' much anticipated large expansion had turned out to be a complete failure. They were drowning in debt because they had overextended themselves and took out large loans. When Sarah said, "Dad's talking about filing for bankruptcy," her voice broke. "Mom is in disarray, and I'm at a loss for what to do. Despite my best efforts, I am unable to resolve this." As I listened, I experienced a range of feelings. I had a sick sense of satisfaction. Wasn't this retribution for the way they handled me? However, I also experienced a twinge of, not quite pity, but a near feeling. Why are you telling me this? I inquired. What do you expect me to do? Sarah's eyes were filled with desperation as she gazed at me. You're doing fantastically in your new work and with your MBA. I hoped you might be able to assist, offer some guidance, or... I understood what she was asking, but she didn't finish the phrase. She desired money. The black sheep being rescued by the golden child. The irony was nearly unbearable. I said, let me get this straight, maintaining a calm voice. After everything that happened, after 3 years of silence, you show up asking for help? Sarah was gracious enough to appear embarrassed. Quietly, she said, I know I messed up. I felt envious, all right? You were always so capable and intelligent. I lost it when I learned that Aunt Margaret was assisting you. I apologize. After 3 years, all she could do was apologize. It was dreadfully insufficient. Sorry doesn't cut it, Sarah, I responded. You have no idea what I've been through because of what you did. I know, she responded, her eyes welling with tears. But we're still related, aren't we? Family members support one another. Just give it some thought, please. Family. The word struck me hard. After everything that had transpired, were we still related? I informed Sarah that I needed some time to reflect. With a disappointed expression, she left her number and left. And now I'm here, attempting to decide what to do. On the one hand, I've put a lot of effort into creating this new life for myself. The familial drama, the incessant comparisons, and the sense of inadequacy have all finally left me. Is it really my intention to become entangled in all of it again? However, a tiny part of me still gives a damn. I feel something when I consider my parents' bankruptcy. Not quite pity, but also not disinterest. However, there is a part of me that sees this as a chance to show them what they lost when they rejected me. To definitively demonstrate that I am not the failure they have always believed me to be. However, is it worthwhile? After the way they treated me, do I owe them anything? And would things truly change even if I did help? Regardless of what I do, would I always be the second best daughter? Reddit, I'm conflicted. How would you respond if you were me? Should I defend myself and let my family work out their own problems? Or should I assist them and run the danger of getting injured again? I've been thinking about it for the past few days, but I'm still not convinced. A part of me wants to step up, offer them a helping hand, and pull them out of this mess. It might present an opportunity to reestablish our relationship on more equal terms. Another part of me, though, is screaming to go away. I'm still recovering from the profound damage they caused me. Would I truly want to expose myself to that suffering once more? Aunt Margaret and I have discussed it. As usual, she has been encouraging, telling me that she will support me no matter what. However, she cautioned me as well. Sometimes helping others means sacrificing yourself, she stated. Make sure you're not setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. I've been distracted recently and my coworkers have noticed. Some have listened sympathetically, but I haven't told them the specifics. One of them stated, sometimes the most professional thing you can do is to keep your personal life separate from your work. That statement has stayed with me ever since. The MBA courses on crisis management and corporate turnarounds are still on my mind. It's likely that I could assist them and provide a strategy for escaping this situation. Should I, though? Am I accountable? What about the apologies from Sarah? Is it sufficient? Is this just another ploy? Or can I believe that she truly feels bad? I'm also concerned about how it might affect my personal financial security. Even though I'm doing well now, I'm not exactly making a ton of money. Assisting them might jeopardize my future ambitions. One thing is certain. This time, whatever I decide, it will be on my terms. I've changed from being that insecure, terrified girl. No matter what occurs with my family, I will always be a strong, accomplished woman who recognizes her value. What do you think, Reddit? Should I put my own health first and let my family deal with the fallout from their choices? Or should I offer them assistance? I'd greatly benefit from an independent viewpoint on this. Update 2. It's me again, Reddit. Things have taken a crazy turn since my previous update, and I can't believe I'm back so quickly. Do you recall how I debated whether or not to assist my family with their restaurant problems? The cosmos, however, chose to give me still another surprise. My parents arrived at my workplace a week following Sarah's visit. You read correctly, my office. They just showed up in the lobby one afternoon after somehow figuring out where I work. Talk about a systemic shock. My assistant buzzed me while I was in the middle of a meeting to let me know that two people were requesting to see me. My heart almost stopped when she told me about them. Feeling as though I was walking to my own death, I excused myself from the meeting and proceeded to the lobby. My parents were there, looking older and more worn out than I had recalled. Dad's shoulders were hunched in a manner I had never seen before, and Mom's hair had turned fully gray. The weight of 3 years of silence hung between us as we simply stared at one another for a minute. Dad finally stated, "We need to talk," in a rough yet oddly diminutive voice. I took them to a coffee shop nearby since I didn't want to have this discussion at work. An uneasy hush descended upon us as we sat down with our beverages. Determined not to make things easy for them, I waited for them to speak. Mom was the first to break. She added in a shaky voice, "We were wrong. We ought never to have expelled you. We ought to have paid attention to you. We sincerely apologize." Over the last 3 years, I had dreamed of this moment countless times, but now that it was actually occurring, I felt nothing. There was only a hollow emptiness. No relief, no joy, not even rage. Dad added, his voice low, "You should return home. We can overcome this difficult period as a family once more." To give myself some time, I took a drink of my coffee. "Why now at last?" I inquired. "Why, after 3 years of silence?" They looked at each other, and I realized there was more to this tale. The depth of their desperation became evident as they started to explain. The restaurant was a total failure, not merely having financial difficulties. In addition to going overboard with the expansion, they had been taking shortcuts and breaching the law to stay afloat, including tax evasion, health code infractions, and even some dubious supplier transactions. They now faced possible criminal penalties in addition to bankruptcy. Dad said in a voice that was just audible above a whisper, "We need your help, your business knowledge, your connections. You could save us." Stunned, I sat there. My parents, who had dismissed me on false pretenses and had always viewed me as second best, now viewed me as their only hope. "Let me get this straight," I remarked, finding it difficult to maintain my composure. "You kicked me out, believed the worst of me without any proof, didn't contact me for 3 years, and now you want me to bail you out of your illegal activities?" Mom attempted to grasp my hand as she reached across the table. I retreated. With tears in her eyes, she continued, "We know we don't deserve your help. However, we remain family. We're at a loss on what to do. So please." Family. That word was used once more. However, as I observed them, I came to the realization that they were no longer members of my family. Aunt Margaret, a member of my family, had given me unwavering support. My family consisted of the friends I had established at work and in my MBA program, who respected me for who I was. I inhaled deeply. "I'm sorry," I said, and I was surprised at how composed I felt. "But I'm unable to assist you. What you're asking, money isn't the only factor. You're asking me to sacrifice all I've worked so hard to achieve, including my job and principles. I'm not capable of doing it." Their shocked expressions were nearly funny. They obviously didn't think I would say no. Anger colored Dad's face. "After everything we've done for you," I interrupted him, "what have you done for me? You mean denying me support for my education when you paid for Sarah's? Excluding me on false pretenses and favoring her throughout my life?" Now Mom was crying aloud. "Please, sweetie, we'll lose everything." I experienced a little pang of guilt. Then I thought back on the previous 3 years, including the hardships, the suffering, and the development and accomplishments I had made on my own. I stood up and said, "I'm sorry you're in this situation, but these are the results of your own actions. I am unable to save you." "We'll be ruined," Dad yelled as I turned to go. "Is that your preference?" I stopped and turned to face them. "I want you to accept responsibility for your actions," I stated. "I want you to understand how much you lost when you threw me out. What I really want, though, is to be free of your drama and manipulation." I left my parents behind and left the coffee shop. After that, I felt as though a burden had been lifted as I entered the street. I had finally chosen myself, set my boundaries, and confronted them. However, the tale doesn't stop there. I gave that confrontation a lot of thought. I came to the realization that merely leaving was insufficient. My parents' actions were unlawful, and if they persisted, others might suffer harm. I therefore had to make a tough choice. I reported what I learned about the restaurant's unlawful operations to the appropriate authorities, including the police, the IRS, and the health department. Although I knew it was the right decision, it wasn't an easy one. The consequences were severe and quick. Screaming and sobbing, Sarah called me and accused me of ruining the family. I don't know what grounds my parents believed they had, but they alternated between pleading for assistance and threatening legal action in their voicemails. But I didn't back down. I informed the authorities of what I knew and made it apparent that I was not involved in any unlawful activity. Aunt Margaret was there for me during the difficult few weeks, reassuring me that I was acting morally. Although the inquiry is still underway, the eatery has reportedly been closed while a thorough audit is conducted. Sarah and my parents are facing severe legal repercussions. Although it's not a joyous conclusion, it's a fair one. In my case, I'm doing all right, actually, better than all right. With everything, there's a feeling of closure. The harmful family dynamics that hindered me for so long have now been broken. I have a successful career. I've even received an approach regarding a possible promotion. I feel like I've found a true professional home because of how supportive my coworkers have been during this process. I've never been closer to Aunt Margaret. After everything calms down, we're arranging a trip together so we have something to look forward to after all this worry. I'm not going to act like it's been simple. There are times when I question whether I made the correct decision and feel bad. However, I know I made the right choice when I think back on all the suffering they inflicted on me, including the years of manipulation and partiality. Here I am then. I felt confused and alone after being evicted from my house 3 years ago. I am now independent, prosperous in my work, surrounded by individuals who truly care about me, and at last free from my family's poisonous influence. Although some may have wished for a joyous family reunion, this is my tale, and I'm proud of the progress I've made. Remember this: if you're struggling with toxic family members or tough choices, you have the right to put your own health first. You are entitled to establish limits. Additionally, there are instances when the family you choose matters more than the one you were born into. Thank you for reading. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.